This portion of the presentation will cover the situation in India. I shall be telling you what the problem is and the solution, which can eliminate pollution, also known as the zero pollution option. So first we look at the Sankey diagram for India. You will see on the left-hand side the raw energy consumed is about 837,000 kilotons or 837 million tons of oil equivalent in the form of coal, oil, gas, hydro, renewable, so on and so forth. On the right, 554,000 kilotons or 554 megatons of oil equivalent. This translates to about 6,500 terawatt hours per year. That is today. So, if we have to replace all the fuel, the primary fuel like coal, oil, to electricity, we will need about 6,500 terawatt hours per year. Once again, here you will see that there are transformation losses which have not been addressed suitably, and so the number will be slightly less than that. For example, for power plants, the transmission losses has been accommodated, but for the transportation sector, it has not been accommodated or accommodated as others, but included in the total consumption, whereas the former is not. So one has to be very careful when looks at the Sankey diagram to make sure what is needed or what is not needed.
The energy consumption today in India is about 5,500 kilowatt hours per person per year. When we talk about energy consumption, we are not talking about only electricity but also vehicles, transportation, industry, commercial sector, so it's a lot higher than the electricity consumption only. And this is one of the fundamental flaws of most of authorities who are concentrating on replacing power plants with solar energy. This consumption would require a 7,000 terawatt hours per year electrical system today. To produce this electricity, a solar system will be required with a capacity of about 5.8 terawatts or almost 6 terawatt. This data has then been extrapolated to 2050 using 12,000 kilowatt hours per person per year from 5,500 today, and a world average of 15,000 kilowatt hours per person per year. India will require 18,000 terawatt hours per year by 2050. The solar system needed for this consumption will be a whopping 15 terawatt.
At present, the government of India is very happy with a system of 1 terawatts. But this will not do the job. One of the important things to remember is a solar plant only produces about 1200 kilowatt hours per year for a 1 kilowatt panel. In other words, 1200 hours per year at rated capacity. Nuclear and fossil plants are designed to work year-round of 8,000 hours per year, although the overall average is about 5,000 to 6,000 hours. In other words, to replace 1 terawatt of fossil plants, one needs about 4 to 5 terawatts of solar power. That is why this number tends to be high. It is estimated that such a system would cost $20 trillion or approximately $1 trillion per year for 20 years.
However, as we want to achieve this by 2050, we have a 30-year time period which will include ramping up and settling down. So an average of $500 billion for 30 years or more is required for this. Having determined how much energy we need, zero pollution energy option for India is imperative and proposed. This option will use only clean renewable energy to drive down pollution, which kills millions of people in India and many more who suffer from the effect of pollution. This can be achieved by use of solar panels, wind, hydro, biomass. However, only solar PV panels can provide the amount of energy we need to install a 15 terawatt system in India to meet all its energy needs. This will require a gradual reduction of fossil fuel plants and corresponding equipment because this is not going to happen overnight. It will take another 30 years, and by then, many of the existing fossil fuel plants would have passed their operating life too. Therefore, all the fossil fuel will be replaced by 2050 by electricity from solar panels.
So while this is going on, the nuclear plants have to reduce generation of nuclear waste also. To limit our legacy of waste for future generations and then phase them out as they reach their operational life over the next 30 years. It is hoped and assumed that all nuclear plants will be retired by 2050, and the less nuclear waste is produced, the less will be our legacy of waste for our future generations and Bharat also.
There are numerous benefits of zero pollution option. This option will provide sustainable energy, reduced pollution, restored clean and clear skies, and health for all. It will reduce almost 2.6 million premature deaths to pollution in India and reduce 35 million daily sufferings per year to a negligible level also. Besides improving health of mankind, the society, it will also restore a healthy environment for the animals and forests. And lastly, it will help control climate change, which is threatening the glaciers in Himalayas, the polar caps, and rising temperatures all over the world.
The Zero Pollution Program proposed for India will use photovoltaic panels in a 15 terawatt PV system, which will require about 90,000 kilometers area using today's technology. Where do we get this 90,000 kilometers from? The total area of India is about 3.7 million kilometers. What is proposed here is a technology option called agrivoltaics, AV, in rural India. What this does, it installs PV panels on the roof of greenhouse-like AV structures to generate electricity above and food below at the same time and on the same land, without using any further land which is in short supply in India to maintain and sustain its biodiversity.
India today or by 2050 will have about 2.5 million square kilometer area of farmland. So 90,000 for that is barely 4%. And the advantage with the agri-voltage is you will not affect the production of food and agricultural produce below. In fact, it can be increased by controlling the temperature, having additional crops in the northern region of the country, and reducing water usage by 50% or more.
These systems will be installed in the 600,000 villages of India. At present, there are 650,000 villages, but it is assumed only 600,000 will be used for various reasons. So to summarize, 15 terawatt panels requiring 90,000 kilometers will be installed on about 4% of India's agricultural farm in its 600,000 villages. What would a model village look like? A typical model village would look something like this. It would have an area of 4.4 square kilometers with 3.8 square kilometers farmland and the balance used for housing, schools, community services, etc. Having about 1,200 residents with a population of 780 million or 52% of the population in 2050. Each village would have a 25 megawatt solar system. As you will see, 25 megawatt multiplied by 600,000 villages gives you 15 terawatts. This 25 megawatt system would be powered by 250 farms, each having a 100 kilowatt system only.
There are different options of agrovoltaics available today. Some are shown here. So it could be greenhouse-like structure or a series of slanting roofs or roofs with open gaps or even tree-like structures developed by government authorities. There are structures where roof allows the light to trickle through the solar panels or in the glass panels. This optimizes the production of electricity and growing of agricultural produce below. Let's call these solar panels as AVPV panels, that is agrovoltaics, photovoltaics panels, which could be designed for different level of transparency depending upon the climate and the crop farmers want to grow below.
This is typically what a model village would look like. It shows a village 2.1 kilometers by 2.1 kilometers with 250 farms, and in the center, the rural urban area with about 300 houses with 250 farmers and the 50 other houses for people who don't farm. On the bottom in the center is the rural industrial area for dairy, for food production or rather food processing, and even allows for some grazing areas for the cows. In India, at present there are 500 million cows, which makes it the largest dairy producer in the world. It is proposed that each village would have 1,000 cattle, resulting in about 600 million cattle in 250. And in addition, there is also poultry and goats. And the facilities on the right, you see, are basically for processing the food and the dairy products. Because as electricity is available to the villages, a lot of the options provided in urban areas become feasible, possible, and optimum. In addition, it shows a center area with playgrounds, a large water body, if the people want to promote aquaculture or fish, and in addition, the schools, the village, panchayat properties, hospital, police station, etc. This is just to bring you down from just figures to the real world. This is typically what a village would look like. Before I go further, there is one very important and significant issue which has to be addressed. As the power plants all shut down one by one and solar picks up, the obvious question is, what do you do at night? Hydro is the answer. But unfortunately, there are not enough hydro facilities to meet the requirements which we shall be discussing right now.
Let us look at the typical daily energy cycle. The graph shows energy requirement over a period of 24 hours starting from 12 midnight to 12 am next day. The first bottom curve shows the current electrical loads which are powering the homes, industries, commercial centers, and other daily needs. The second curve shows the additional loads due to the conversion from electricity from fossil to electricity from solar energy, excluding the transportation sector. The next curve above is for charging the electric vehicles, buses, and other forms of transportation devices. After considering these loads, what is needed is the energy which is required to feed the loads from sunset to sunrise when there is no solar electricity. So the need for energy storage will be very substantial and almost about 20 to 25% of the total. And this is one of the challenges and expenses which have been included in the proposal.
So, what are the additional needs of the zero pollution program besides land and the equipment? The first, as we pointed out, is the energy storage from sunset to sunrise. Fortunately, various options are available to us. Hydro pumped storage, which are site specific but limited, as society is not willing to permit development of these facilities as it consumes a lot of land. So we will have to either utilize just existing hydro pump storage or convert the hydro plants to hydro pump storage or a combination of the two. The next is to use compressed air or water or pressurized water. The advantage is air is abundantly available and so is water. These sites have utilized caverns, but the proposal is to use pressure vessels which can be placed anywhere in the villages. As you saw in the model village, there is a section of the village in the center where such storage can be provided. Then there is thermal storage using heat pumps and other options which create heat from electricity in the daytime and produce electricity at night. In addition, there is the electric solution of batteries, fuel cells, capacitors. Unfortunately, most of these options utilize materials which do not last very long and have to be replaced periodically, resulting in most cases of toxic waste. So if we are trying to eliminate pollution and end up producing solid waste from dead batteries and fuel cells and capacitors, nothing has been really achieved. It is my opinion that this is a dead-end technology as far as energy storage is concerned, because it's going to require about 3 to 4 terawatts system of storage, which will lead to massive solid waste. Over and above the other energy storage options, there are also things like flywheels, magnets, hydrogen, oxygen in gaseous form, which can be produced in the day and used at night. But due to the large requirement of energy storage, as mentioned earlier, about 3 terawatts in India, these are not easily doable, the storage options of compressed air and water. In addition to that, as the 600,000 villages of India become the center of power generation, this system will be rural-centric rather than urban-centric at present, and will require modifications, upgrades, and other changes to accommodate this shift of flow from rural to urban India. In addition, the existing approximately 1 terawatt of smaller electrical grid will now have to absorb 15 terawatts during the daytime, and will require a massive upgrade of the existing electrical grid. In addition, as 20% of the energy storage and another 15-20% of rural storage, of rural consumption, will be in the villages, the possibility of using DC in place of AC will have to be evaluated, as solar power produces DC only. In addition, as shown in the graph earlier, vehicle charging would have to be carried out in the daytime rather than at night by using stored solar power. The regulatory and tariff environment will also have to substantially change and consider premium rates for storage, postage stamp rates, or other variable options. Essentially, the electric grid will have to be completely revamped, and these expenses are not included in the business option, as they are not part of the supply of electricity, but the transmission and subsequent distribution of it, and will be covered by other organizations, excluding the farmers and the villages. The Zero Pollution Program business is now presented. At the outset, it must be mentioned that this is an investment and not expenditure, as it has a positive return on investment, and the money invested will be paid back by the revenue generated from the sale of electricity. This is very important to note, as it can change the thinking of the government and the people that this is not another project of giving away to the farmer and not getting anything in return. What is proposed is a direct G2F partnership. By G2F, I mean government to farmer partnership of $20 trillion by 2050. In this partnership, the government will provide the refinancing to the Reserve Bank of India, its banker. The farmers will provide the land, day-to-day operation and maintenance and security as they reside there. And the Government of India and farmer share from the revenue collected proposed is approximately 70% for the Government of India and the balance 30% for the farmer. The annual production of electricity and the revenue generated will be 18,000 terawatt hours or $1.44 trillion per year based on 6 rupees per kilowatt hour, including storage. In addition, the carbon credits at $25 per carbon credit will result with additional revenue of around $0.45 trillion. So out of this almost $2 trillion, $1.32 trillion will go to Government of India every year, and the farmers will get 0.57 or 0.6 trillion in cash or electricity. As they also need electricity, they can consume. If not, they will collect in cash as metered on each 100 kilowatt PV installation. What this means is each farmer will get a gross income of 3.8 lakhs per year, out of which some minimal O&M expensive to cover cleaning and other such expenses are included. As this is a partnership where the government provides financing and the farmer land, O&M and security, any major breakdowns will have to be covered by the Government of India.
Having proposed the Zero Pollution Program and the business plan of G2F partnership, the next portion will cover challenges, opportunities, and benefits of such a program.